I'll just ask the question. Matt and Kate, you know everybody on the phone, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Didn't want to skip introductions if you needed them. Darcy, is your family safe so far?
So far, I think I mentioned my brother had to come in off the island, and they're staying in Charleston, so they're just boarded up and sitting tight. But Mom's choosing not to board up at all, so we'll see how badly Myrtle Beach is hit.
Oh, I have a sister at Myrtle Beach.
Yeah, they like to send me the weather updates when it's nice and warm and we're 3 feet, deep in snow. But this short period of time that these storms come through and taunt them, I've told them I'm really sort of tired of. It scares me a little too much, but so far so good.
Well, we'll hope they just get their big rainstorms like they get.
Are they right on the beach, or are they inland a little bit there, Darcy?
My niece and brother are real close to the water there in Charleston, but my mom's about 15. I'm gonna say about 15 miles inland, so not too bad.
Yep.
Just going to give Rich a quick text and make sure he's not. Well, my thought for the day was earlier, and maybe this is my $1 million idea, so I shouldn't say it out loud, but I'm wondering why, if you live on the beach, that life jackets are not a part of the hurricane emergency kit.
I don't know. Would folks just get tossed around a lot?
That'd be my thought.
Yeah, I don't know. Just it was a random thought I had watching the Bahama news. Hi, Rich.
Hello.
We have everybody on the phone ready to go, with the exception of Rob Petting and Mark Thayer, who are not able to make the call. So whenever you're ready to jump in, I don't think, I double checked, and Matt and Kate do know everybody on the phone. So if you want to go ahead and kick us off.
Okay, sure. I'm just pulling up my notes. Okay, thanks Matt and Kate for joining us. Sorry about the little pause there. Basically, the format for today is that we came up with 5 kind of core questions that we wanted to start with, and then we'll open it up to the rest of the subcommittee that was able to make the call today to ask their questions. And so I'm just going to jump right in. Our first question is, how do you plan to promote and keep IMGMA recognizable at the Capitol as a healthcare resource for the legislators? And what role can you take that IMGMA is associated with you when you talk to legislators or administrative departments?
Can you repeat the second part of that for me? This is Kate.
Yeah, the second half was, what role can you take that will show how you're associated with IMGMA when you talk with legislators and or administrative departments?
Okay, so I'll start with promoting, and then obviously have Matt jump in. I think one of the most critical pieces of things with the legislature is that consistency. Is the showing up, the conversations that we have regularly, attending things like the MAC Council and Council on Human Services and some of those other things. And in those contexts, communicating the IMGMA priorities, talking about the resources that the association can bring. Promoting that is often just sort of the day in, day out, attending subcommittee meetings. I think you all know that when we have a subcommittee meeting, Matt or I or both of us, when we go around the room and we announce ourselves, we say who we're there representing and our position on bills. And that lets legislators know, each time we do that, and certainly early in the session, that's often multiple times a day, what we're here to do and who we're there to promote. Matt, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I thought a good example would be on the real big issues. We have the ability to have meetings with the key legislators and staff, which we did earlier this year or prior to session, I can't remember, with Republican committee chairs in the committee office. It was an issue that pertained directly to us, and we felt we had possible solutions, and also to explain in more detail to the legislators and staff to have a better understanding of the impact in the real world. And I thought those meetings are hard to get, and to have the people we had in that room, I think was important, and kind of shows what we bring to the table and our experience and our relationships that we have up there, to put us in the association in a position to potentially craft legislation and help them find solutions to, in that case, the Medicaid issues.
Mm-hmm. And then I think in terms of the role that we can play, that in a way playing that role is similar to the second part of that, the first part of the question of how do we promote. It is those day in, day out, the communication with legislators, the being valued as a resource, which IMGMA has really excelled at, in terms of offering, I know this was now a couple of years ago, but I remember when we were initially transitioning to Medicaid managed care, and we came in with really detailed examples of what was going on in billing, having a meeting with Representative Heaton, with Mickey Steer, who was the Medicaid director at that time, and walking through those things really specifically. Those are the kinds of things that have informed both improvements that didn't have a legislative solution, and then also those kind of Medicaid oversight things that, frankly, some of the legislators have been reluctant to pass, but because they received, credible, not inflammatory information in a timely way, that really made a difference.
I just think in summary, we have the experience and connections in the environment right now to meet with state agency leadership in any of the agencies, with staff and with the key legislators.
Okay, thank you. And I think that that touches on one of the questions down the line here in a minute. But thank you for those responses.
Rich.
Yeah.
Sorry, this is Darcy. Hey, can I ask a sort of a follow-up or a side question on that? In a point that was brought up in a previous conversation, Matt and Kate, do you feel you know, with all those meetings that you are trying to stay consistent with, meeting with the subcommittees, would it be something that you would entertain bringing someone from our organization with to those meetings, planning them ahead of time so that, you know, legislative committee members, current president, that kind of thing could attend those meetings with you?
Oh, yeah, we have, and absolutely. I think it's, you know, it's something we have to do. And the meetings that we were referring to, we had, I don't know who was all. I can remember why Dave Weiss was there. Gene was there for some of them. I can't remember who was all in the room, but Darcy, absolutely, because my knowledge and Kate's knowledge of some of the billing issues that we had, it absolutely requires membership to be there.
I think, you know, we want to strike the balance between being respectful of your time and the fact that you have full-time positions, you know, that you have to honor. But, you know, just to echo with what Matt would say, we'd have one of you with us at the Capitol as often as you wanted to be there. And as much as we're able to, we can try to work to schedule those things in advance. It can be hard in that environment to do that, but as much as we're able to, we're happy to do that.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Okay, I'll move on to question 2. Matt and Kate, would you review with us how you'll determine from the point legislation is introduced what IMGMA's position would be on a bill?
Sure, I'll start and then have Matt jump in. So what Matt and I do each day, our process, maybe this is helpful to you, is we're both early risers. So we get up, I get up, I know Matt does too, and we go through the bill book every day and make notes about, you know, where we think there's a bill that would be of IMGMA interest. And I kind of look at it in, this isn't the perfect fit, but a lead, collaborate, support sort of model where, okay, this is a piece of legislation that IMGMA would really play a leadership role on, either in advancing or defeating, or this would be a good piece of legislation for IMGMA to collaborate with other healthcare groups on, or perhaps support the work of other healthcare groups, kind of a 1, 2, 3. Then Matt and I sit down when we get to the Capitol and work out client registration. Because we've represented the organization for so long, we often know, you know, have a really good idea of how to register. And then on those that we don't, it's typically Matt who sends out and says, you know, here's what we think, but if we need additional feedback or anything like that. So that's kind of our initial screen. Then we also go through the subcommittees, and that can be a kind of a hectic process. They're scheduled with some notice, but it can be, you know, it can be 15 minutes at 7:30 in the morning the next day kind of thing. And we take the information that we have and present that information at subcommittee. And candidly, sometimes we're there to listen and learn more about what the legislation is, to try to understand the potential impact on the organization. Matt, do you want to, I'll pause and let you jump in on that.
Yeah, on issues that, you know, that are too detailed, we're not sure, then we would send the bill to Jean for dissemination to the legislative committee or the leadership, whomever she feels is the right group to look at it. And those are the billing issues, or maybe some entity put in a Medicaid managed care and oversight bill or something like that. Kate was right. We've got a lot of experience and can usually tell pretty quickly our position, and then on those issues we don't. It's great to get the member input, which we do quite often, actually.
Okay, thank you for that. Question 3, how involved are you in administrative policy setting meetings? For instance, IME, DHS, licensure boards, etc., in which you can determine or represent what will affect IMGMA membership, and what are the processes you would use on the administrative side for advocacy?
If there's someone that knows the rules process better than me, I haven't met them yet. I've been doing it for probably 25 years. Have appeared before the Rules Committee many times, including the last couple months. I take great pride in reviewing the rules of every agency. They're coming out about twice a month right now. If there's anything of interest that I read, I send those out. I would send them to Jean. And, you know, on the noticed rules, when they first come out, there's two things. One, there's an appearance I think is important before the Rules Committee. And then secondly, on most rules, they have a public comment period and a public hearing. And we've participated in plenty of those recently. My first, you know, if it's a big issue, I'd simply call Megan Jones, the chair of the Rules Committee from rural Spencer, and just communicate, say, Megan, we got you know, our association here has a major issue with this rule proposal, and I would feed questions to her to harass the appropriate agency at that time, and then Kate and I would start to work the committee. But I'd start with the chair first. If it's an issue that perhaps there's more of a mistake made on the rules side, and we have a relationship with the staff inside the agency, I might try to work that informally first. And we can usually tell those kind of things, or if we're going to have a major battle, which then we'd go to the rules chair, Megan, and she's very aggressive and been a good friend to help on those things.
The other pieces that I would add are administrative committees like the MAC Council. The MAC Council meets quarterly, and I attend those meetings in person. I do occasionally dial in for the Executive Council. They've been kind of picking through Medicaid managed care and reporting and some things like that. So I don't hit all of those meetings, but I listen in on quite a few of those. I regularly attend the Council on Human Services. We have, both Matt and I, very good relationships with the departments that oversee the issues important to the association. You know, particularly the Department of Human Services, where I worked for 5 years, and then, you know, occasionally public health. We have not had as many issues with the licensing boards. It's been a little bit, it's been a while since I've been to a Board of Medicine meeting, but I do always review the agenda. I'm on the distribution list. And if there are things, for example, on the Board of Medicine or the PA licensing board or the Board of Nursing, we certainly monitor those, but I would describe those as being less common that we actually appear.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm pausing just to see if there's feedback from the rest of the group before moving on. Question number 4 is, where do you find other healthcare lobbying firms provide you a challenge, especially when there might be a bill that favors them versus the stance that IMGMA has taken? And then conversely, you know, then the next bill is one that we want to work with another lobbying firm or in cooperation with another agency like the IHA, IMA, UIHC, etc.
So Matt and I both, and I would actually say the vast majority of lobbyists in the building, professional lobbyists in the building, really value relationships. We behave professionally with integrity, and it is so common that on one issue, you know, we might not be in agreement with an organization, but the next one we are, and you know, that's something that we just are very routinely working through. I think that Matt and I both have excellent relationships in the healthcare, you know, in the lobbyists, the group of lobbyists who represent healthcare organizations. You know, and when there's when there's a conflict, we address it directly, and when we work together, we're glad to be able to do that. I don't know, Matt, if you have anything.
Yeah, I think the big thing is we don't represent the MCOs, which would be the major source of a conflict. We do, we have physical therapist provider group we do represent. I think the groups, especially with the focus on Medicaid, I just haven't seen any conflicts come up. We're usually all united. We work closely with Dennis at IMS. We work with IHA when we have to, and it's been fairly smooth because we've all coalesced kind of against the MCOs on some reform legislation.
Okay, thank you. The question number 5, please expand on your interpretation of conflict of interest. You just brought that up, and how you would handle it. Based on historical bills, where do you see the potential conflicts of interest between your current client list to us?
I think that you all saw in our response to the RFP, our firm has an official conflict of interest policy, which reads a little bit dry. I will acknowledge that. But I want to be really clear that Matt and I take conflicts of interest very, very seriously. We do not entertain, requests for representation when we think there'll be a conflict with an existing client. On the occasion that unanticipated conflicts arise, we notify both entities that there's a potential for a conflict, and work to resolve that in a way that is most favorable. I think in the now nearly 5 years that Matt and I have been working together, we have had one conflict that was not resolved. It was not in the healthcare area. It was in a technology area, and that was communicated to the client, and we worked out a resolution that was favorable. But it is something that we take extremely seriously. You asked, the second part of that question is where there might be opportunities for conflict. I think that the only thing that came to mind is scope of practice issues that sometimes get a little spicy in the Capitol. Historically, IMGMA has generally stayed out of those. It's not something they've taken a position on. But that is the only place, and even that I just don't see. I think that when there's a scope of practice issue, the professional associations that represent that particular provider or profession, they tend to be the ones that are hashing it out. And so I think that the exposure there is minimal, but I guess I would point that out as one place where there might be some exposure. But it's hard to see, for example, the physical therapist really being at odds with IMGMA's goals and priorities.
Okay, thank you for that. I will open up now to the rest of the group for additional questions they might have or clarification they'd like to ask.
Sure, this is Dave. Hey, I'm going to go back in time a little bit on you, Matt. When we first interviewed you, and you were more of the Republican, and at that time, Lorelei and John were more of the Democrat side as far as working both sides. Kate, is that where are you kind of more from a partisan side, when it comes to the relationship from the different parties? Is that the role that you guys are playing now, or how do you work that?
So I am personally a Democrat. I was the policy director for Governor Culver during his term in office. I worked for Senator Harkin. The fun fact on that is that I am actually the first second-generation Harkin staffer. My parents worked for him on his first campaign for Congress the year that I was born. And so when I went to work for him when I graduated from college, I was the first second generation person. There were a few more that came after me, but so I say that, but I do want, and Matt is a Republican, and that's important because there are times when, you know, their work takes on a partisan angle. But what I will say is that I am not partisan at work. It's not a secret that I'm a Democrat. It's not a secret that Matt's a Republican, but I think we both work hard to maintain good bipartisan relationships. And in the healthcare space, while those issues can be really heightened, they are not always partisan. And I would argue, you know, my relationship, for example, with Dave Heaton, who I know has now retired, you know, was probably one of my closest legislative relationships. I work incredibly well with Joel Fry and Shannon Lundgren. I'm good friends with the staffers who staff those committees, and it's just not it is not something that, it is probably once or twice a session I have to pull out my Democratic bona fides to get something done. And I would say Matt maybe pulls out the Republican stuff a little more often because, you know, Republicans are in charge of everything, but it is certainly something that, while we're aware of it, we work really hard to be nonpartisan and not political in that space.
Okay.
I don't know, Matt, if you want to jump in.
Yeah, no, I think it's you know, some of my closest friends and relationships at the Capitol are Democrats, and just as Kate said, Kate has a very tight relationship with the key staffer on the House side for healthcare, who's very powerful and influential. I think they were out for drinks last week, but there are times, there's certain conversations that I'll perhaps with the governor's office where you intertwine some politics that, you know, maybe I have alone, and Kate would do the same with Todd Pritchard, the Democrat leader in the House. There's just certain times it matters.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I've got two more questions for you, if you don't mind. And on your client list, you know, taking a look there and the numbers that you do have in your client list, where do you see that you'd have a cap on the number of clients that you have, or what's your determination on that? What's an optimal number for your firm?
We've been fairly steady. I don't think we've grown a whole lot. Not looking to. We're pretty choosy on, and turned down actually quite a bit in the last year. Just, it's got to be a great fit for one. We've got to have the time to do it, the desire to do it. I will say this about our client list. There's quite a few of them there that have no legislative issues, that are strictly, some of them are one-offs with economic development. Some of them are just monitoring, you know, like Alter Trading, which is a barge service. Very rarely have a legislative issue, but occasionally help with some DNR regs or some issues that political advice on who to give to, et cetera. The same with some of the bigger companies, Arconic, mainly the DNR, economic development. Tyson Foods rarely engages up at the Capitol, but I do a lot of plant tours for them. I was in Storm Lake yesterday. They just kind of want to know what's going on and have some relationship in case something goes wrong. So the client list is long, but there's, as far as real active at the Capitol, I would say that the IMGMA is, because of the healthcare space is so busy right now and has been, is up there in terms of our time. And we're not looking to grow, Dave, and I think, you know, I think we've been fairly steady maybe the last 4 or 5 years. I don't know.
Yeah, the only other thing I would say, we did have a couple of years ago the opportunity to bid on a client that we thought might be a good fit. And in doing that, we did a pretty careful look at our workload and had determined that if we were successful in that bidding, that we would bring in another person to assist. Now, it ended up not being the right fit for us, but that is something that we do have regular discussions on, of making sure that, you know, we have a capacity to do the work that we're being hired to do.
Okay. And at this point, my last question is, you worked with us for a while, so what do you wish that we could have done better for you?
I guess, you know, you've always participated. You've come to the Capitol when we've needed you. Dave, a lot of that's been on you. A lot of that was, you know, due to Dave Heaton being in such an important position. I don't know. I've always had responses on bills and somebody at the subcommittee if we've needed them there, or, you know, the state agency meetings. I don't have any shining or anything that just jumps out.
No, I don't think I do either.
Okay.
So this is Julie. A question that I have is that when we look at this RFP, and in my mind, IMGMA and the lobbying efforts, the more visible we can be to our membership, I think the better off that is, hopefully getting better membership engagement in lobbying efforts, and certainly helping them to understand as we look at our budget and try to get, you know, the most that we can for the budget. And I'm wondering, I know that you folks have provided like the quarterly newsletter, and that's listed in the RFP, but I'd like to hear about like how you think weekly updates might look and work for IMG as far as being able to get things pushed out to the membership.
I think that I've got the RFP in front of me, and you know, I think that we're happy to do that in a way that makes sense. We're happy to do that weekly if that's something that's identified as a priority. They might, you know, there are weeks where there is an awful lot going on, and there are weeks where there is less going on. But if it's the kind of thing that you think the consistency to the membership of having something in their inbox every Monday morning is an important visibility factor, we're certainly happy to have, you know, to provide that.
And yeah, we've done a lot. I mean, 25 years worth of the newsletters. I think consistency. I think for some members and membership associations, like Kate said, just having something there consistently, even if there's not a lot of opens, adds some value to the association, and the members see that. They may not always look at it. They may not always have time. So I think it's important, I believe, on that level. I'm not a big fan of fluff or just putting out, you know, we can bore you to death of, I like real meaty issues or something that the membership is engaged in, the issues important to them. I don't like to run through a lot of committee or inside baseball at the Capitol, but I think consistency, there is value there for the association, and you know, the real value is to engage the membership. So hopefully if they can talk to their legislators on an issue that is important, that they'll do that, or call us or email us, you know, if they have further questions. But it's important. I agree.
Thank you.
I was going to ask a similar question in regard to communication. Sorry, this is Darcy again. Because I feel I've been a member of IMGMA for quite a while, and although I'm not on the legislative committee, as you both probably know, I've been very active in the Payer Relations Committee, Insurance and Reimbursement Committee is what it was before, and a lot of the issues obviously cross over, and I will say that I felt, I've always felt, I felt in the past that communication was a little more thorough and complete, and I feel like more recently it's kind of dropped off, and as one example, We are trying to keep our communication open with IMS and work with them a little more closely in regard to payer relations. And one of the things that we found out from them recently, sort of kind of backdoorish, was that Liz Matney is no longer with IME, and she was one of our go-to people from the Payer Relations Committee perspective when we couldn't get answers from whoever they assigned to our committee, which was never consistent or helpful usually. But so that was something, I guess, that caught us off guard, that we didn't hear that information from you all. I really feel like communication and that sort of updating is necessary, and I would be concerned that I wouldn't want it to drop off, even if you think that, like you just said, Matt, that you want there to be meat in it, but something might be meaningful to a committee or to a member that we might not necessarily have thought of before. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, point well taken. And yeah, I know that move by Liz was a big deal, and you know, that's probably on me for not sending that out. But yeah, point well taken.
This is Jean. I have one question from Mark. Suggestions, Matt and Kate, that you have about making Lobby Day more effective?
Matt and I have talked about Lobby Day a lot, and as we were responding to the RFP and your desire to have kind of a menu of options and to be mindful of budget, talking about, probably the biggest value in Lobby Day is that member engagement and training your next generation or your next group of people who will engage on legislative issues. It is so tricky because, and we see this, with a handful of other clients who do Lobby Days as well, that sometimes they're really well timed and impactful, and other times, legislators are in caucus for 3 hours and you don't talk to very many people, or legislation either hasn't been released or has been pulled back depending on what time of the year you're there. It is really something that we've talked a lot about how to improve it. And if there was a secret sauce, we would love to find it.
Yeah, it does seem kind of helter-skelter, I think, because they don't have offices. It's so difficult to schedule things, trying to get legislators there. Saying all that, I think over the years it's been, as much as it's crazy trying to find legislators, they're reluctant to set meetings because they have to cancel. There's something else going on, floor debate, whatever. I think we've worked really hard to connect our members to their legislators. I mean, I've worked really hard when we're there. I've had Kate, I've had Courtney, who helps us take people around and try to find where they're hiding, wait outside the committee room. We've had good leadership meetings. And, when I look around, whether it's a legislative breakfast or lunch, those are hit and miss also. I think we do a pretty good job on connecting our members, with legislators. At the end of the day, as Kate said, I think that's the number one thing is making that connection so we can ask for help. You can ask for help to that legislator later after establishing a relationship. In a perfect world, we'd have meetings set up, A, B, C, and D. And some years we've done that with committee chairs. Some years we've had people come in and speak, but you just kind of have to fly by the seat of your pants a lot of years just because of the scheduling there. So I feel actually, as much as I'd love to have a great schedule and have people actually show up on the legislator side. We've done pretty well on making those connections, in my opinion, when I look at all the other options, the legislative breakfast, which I think are not, they're inferior to what we do, or the lunches. I just don't think you make the one-on-one connections. So, and I value the time. We've had people come in from Dubuque, Sioux City, Iowa City, and sacrifice their day, and I take that, personally, and try really hard to make sure we get those connections no matter what it takes, and texting legislators, finding them, etc. I'm just trying to think. I'm making a better, trying to get a legislator, a key one down to talk to us if we're at the IMS building. That'd be great if we could do that. It's just proven to be very difficult to get them out of the Capitol. I have ideas. Perhaps we could get a room at the Capitol to have them come down. That might be a way to improve it, to change things up. But kind of my random thoughts.
Thank you, Rich. Anybody else have any questions? Any follow-up to anything that's been asked?
Yeah, Matt or Kate, as you've put in your RFP the different levels, like you said, the menu, how, I guess, could you talk a little bit more about that and where you might, you got your 5,000, then you got your 7,500. Maybe talk a little bit about the differences on that. I see a list there, but what do you see that's the differences between those levels?
Yeah, we were asked, Dave, to try to set some levels to give your committee some flexibility and some options. That was a pretty key component that came through on the RFP, and to understanding your, the financial realities there. I think on the 7,500, more details, more active participation by us in the process on a proactive basis, in terms of if we're trying to push a piece of legislation. It's always very difficult to get anything passed, not as difficult to kill a bill. So I think you have more of our time, more engagement proactively on issues, more time at your conferences, etc. And I think on the 5,000, it's fairly, it's the tracking, it's having the presence at the Capitol, it's communicating to you, and if you need a weekly at that amount, I'm sure we can do that, a weekly update, and just trying to keep the membership abreast of what's going on there at the Capitol. Whereas the higher fee, I think there'd be, more active engagement on proactive issues and communication to those legislators.
I think the only thing that I would add to this, I know it's communicated in the RFP, but Matt and I both really like working with you. We like representing the organization, and we don't want you to look at these bullets and have that be have the impression that that's somehow cast in stone. If we need to work on negotiating different pieces that are important to you, that we want to have that conversation with you, and would like to continue to work with you on it. So Matt summarized it well, but I was the one of the two of us, as we were responding to this, that was really nervous about putting this down on paper, because I was concerned that it becomes, there's this and there's that, and we lose the opportunity to have a dialogue about what's important. So I just want to point that out.
That's a good point. That was difficult.
Okay. Yep, understand. What questions do you have for us?
Yeah, one thing, if we could, you know, if there's any way, and I think Darcy, one of her questions was to, and if there's any way we can partner with you, or our work would help in the membership retention or attendance at events, so your helps with the finances. I don't know what that is right now, but if there's any way to leverage that, you know, let us know. We want to show value to the association, and in turn, you can show it to your members. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah. No, I would agree with that, and I don't think I have any other questions. Are there things that, there information that you need or want from us that we haven't given you?
Do you want to take that one?
In looking at your current client list, I know that it's been a question that we have raised before. I see Genesis Health System on the list. We kind of talked about conflict. Has that been an issue? Do you see that as an issue? Is there areas where that I don't know, your name associated with them has caused it to not necessarily be apparent that you're associated with us?
I like Kate handles a lot of the Genesis communication.
Yeah. I mean, just being really candid, the representing both organizations, I think, has informed the broad work of both of the organizations, if that makes sense. You know, having learned more of the issues with IMGMA has probably helped us represent Genesis, and vice versa. The issues that Genesis has worked on, in the last couple of years, they had a certificate of need issue, a very discrete certificate of need issue with a mental health hospital over in the Quad Cities, where they wanted to make it clear that the strategic behavioral health, which is opening that mental health hospital in other states, has come in and opened the hospital and then sold it. And in Iowa law, if you do that, under the prior law, it would have allowed them to have that be any kind of hospital they wanted it to be, not just a behavioral health hospital. So they wanted a piece of legislation that made it clear that if your license is a behavioral health hospital, then you remain a behavioral health hospital if ownership changes. They've been very engaged on Medicaid managed care oversight, and their priorities have aligned right along with IMGMA. And the final thing that they've been really interested in is medical malpractice improvement. So we've not experienced, in the whole time that I've been working with them and with you, we've not experienced any conflict at all. In fact, I think representing both has made both better.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And I guess I have one more thought about that just before we move on. You know, it is not uncommon at the Capitol for lobbyists to have, you know, clients on multiple issues, and legislators are accustomed. When I sit down, so for example, when I sit down to talk to a legislator, I always identify what I'm there to talk to them about. So I say, you know, Kate Walton, I'm here to discuss, you know, an issue that's important to the Iowa Medical Group Managers Association, and then walk them through that. They understand that, they're used to that. You know, I'm obviously not privy to every meeting that lobbyists have, but that's a very common way to begin conversations with policymakers, and I see my colleagues doing that all the time. So I haven't seen that as being an issue in terms of, you asked about like clouding, you know, representing one clouding the impact of the other. I just haven't seen that be an issue for us, and frankly for my colleagues in the building.
Okay, I appreciate that, Kate.
Anybody else have questions, comments? Rich, do you want to wrap up?
Sure. I just want to say thanks everybody for your time today. I know we put this call together pretty quickly, so I appreciate everybody's flexibility, and Matt and Kate, thank you so much for taking time to talk with us some more about this. As you can tell, it's important to our organization that we have really good, effective lobbyists. I think you've been that, and we've appreciated your efforts, and we were very happy when you submitted the latest RFP. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Thanks, Ron.
Thank you both.